Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willy Hassell. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. Good evening once again, and welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. This is the show where the paranormal becomes the normal. I am your host, Willy Hassell, your gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And along with me, as always, of course, the sunshine of the show, the lovely, the mystical, the mysterious, Lynn Nickerson. Good evening, Lynn.
Good evening, Willie. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's kind of drizzling out there, kind of cool for September evening.
I know what happened. A week ago, it was up in the 90s. We were sweating, and now it's...
It's like fall just slammed in, and here we are.
Yeah, it slammed in and got drizzly and all that stuff.
I know, makes you think winter's on the way.
Shh, quiet.
So, no, we don't mention that W-A-N-T-E-R word, do we?
No, not in front of me, no.
Okay, well, are you going to introduce our very interesting, controversial guest this evening?
I certainly am, and I have, I'm combining two introductions here, so I hope I can get this right.
I'm sure you will.
You have a lot of faith, don't you?
I do.
Tonight, joining us on the show is an award-winning author, Brad Olsen. He is creator of the World Stompers and the Sacred Places 108 Destinations series. And Brad is joining us tonight to discuss his latest, the Esoteric Series. The Esoteric Series. In this series of books, Brad seeks to outline subjects dealing with the hidden, the secret, occult, forbidden, little understood, magical, threatening to authorities, and not least, mystical. Topics include many paranormal and psychologically...
parapsychological... The psychological
go ahead, you wrote it, you
subjects. Paranormal and parapsychological subjects.
Okay. And with that, good evening, Brad.
Hey, how's it going, Willie and Lynn?
Hi, Brad. Good evening. Welcome back.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you back.
Well, tonight we're going to be discussing Brad's book, the first one in this esoteric series called Modern Esoteric. And since most people are unfamiliar with the focus of this series, I'd like to give a short synopsis of the book to bring everyone on board. Modern Esoteric, which is the book, is a compilation of many topics covered by other authors such as Michael Tellinger, Zachariah Sitchin, Graham Hancock, and many others who unveiled the beginnings of one of Earth's most recent histories. It begins with who we are as sentient beings and why we are such, giving consideration to the possible inception of our species by extraterrestrials who purportedly came to Earth approximately 600,000 years ago to mine gold. Now, this race or strain of individuals, who have been referred to as either the Anunnaki or the Nephilim, were in need of workers to labor for gold in their mines here on Earth. So it was gold that would be taken back to their planet because of a depleted atmosphere. So because of this need for labor on such a large scale, an interbreeding program took place that fostered Earthlings of several different extraterrestrial strains, setting up a hierarchy of lord and laborer, which is a paradigm that continues to this day. Now, Brad points out how Earth people are enslaved to the big banks and energy conglomerates, and how we are now losing our personal freedoms and moving toward a dictatorship here in the United States. But he also offers solutions starting with understanding our spiritual self and the strength of our own personal power. So, Brad, for most people, this is a huge leap to consider that extraterrestrials might have come here last week, let alone 600,000 years ago. So, if you could explain to our listening audience some of the evidence that you have uncovered to support this theory.
Sure. Well, most of the extraterrestrial stuff is in the second book, Future Esoteric, but I do have to preface some of the things that I write about in book number 2, which we're going to talk about again in December.
Yes.
When I'm on the show again.
Mm-hmm.
But the first book, Modern Esoteric, is really where the story begins. And by the story, I mean the entire human experience. And this goes even further back from the Anunnaki, back to evidence that there had been antediluvian civilizations here on Earth, what we commonly know as Lemuria or Atlantis. And then we move forward into what you said in the setup piece about the Anunnaki Nephilim, that they were here to extract the gold. They needed a worker race. And as you also said in your setup piece, take a page out of Michael Tellinger's research, which I did.
Oh,
in
did
the Blood of the
you?
Gods chapter, and emphasized that there are enormous amounts of ruins down in South Africa. And they're almost always surrounded by these ancient gold mines, supporting his claim, and what I think is correct, that indeed there was an ET race that was here to mine gold. They took some of the proto-humans, such as Homo erectus, tinkered around with our DNA. And I should just like to say that I've been a stalwart evolutionist for many, many years, since I was in high school.
Really?
I mean, I debated all the creationists about evolution and still do believe that evolution is really what runs the natural world. And I do have a chapter in Modern Esoteric called Lifeology about how wondrous all the species on this planet have become. But there's just something really strange about humans, and that is that we have these different characteristics that are different from the animals, such as the Rh negative blood.
That's right.
But that we also have this basically a giant leap in our evolutionary progression.
Mm-hmm.
And when people say they want to find the missing link between the apes and the humans, they're not going to find it because they're not there. And that's simply because we have been genetically altered. I hope that answers your question.
Now, do you feel that the interbreeding took place with the Neanderthals, or even a primate that was earlier than that predated the Neanderthals?
You know, I can't really
What do
hear
you
you
think?
guys too much. It's very, very quiet.
Really?
But I
Can't hear us, you said?
about what again?
Did you say you can't hear us?
It's very faint coming
Oh.
through my phone.
Well, I'll speak up. Do you feel that there was another primate involved in the interbreeding rather than Neanderthals?
Ah, yes. Now I heard you. Another primate. Well, indeed. I mean, we do know that Neanderthal walked the earth concurrent with what we would consider modern human Homo sapien sapien. And then Homo erectus was actually more primitive than Neanderthal, and they were gone before modern humans were here. You know, I like Lloyd Pye's hypothesis that perhaps what we know of as Bigfoot could very well be Neanderthal. And some of the other lesser-known human types who have walked the earth could actually be some of these other type of man-ape-like species that have been sighted from down in Indonesia all the way up to Siberia to the redwood forests of North America, where I'm at.
Oddly enough, they seem to have the ability to fade in and out of dimensions. That's kind of a strange trait for a very grounded, materialistic being, you know. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I have a cryptozoology chapter in Future Esoteric.
Oh, do you?
Where I speak about many of the traits of the Bigfoot and Yeti. And that is one of the strange traits, is that they could phase in and out.
So do you think maybe Bigfoot is extraterrestrial of some sort?
I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm really not sure what it is.
Big question mark.
I will say that I think the evidence is compelling enough to say that it does exist.
Yeah.
It is here in a physical form. How it phases in and out, would suggest it would be extraterrestrial, but
where's the evidence?
Right.
We just don't have the research and tools and study and a living body to dissect. Now, I do have pictures in Future Esoteric in the cryptozoology chapter, some skull caps and some hands that are on display from the Yeti in Tibetan monasteries that can be seen. And I wish some scientists would take this seriously and get up there and do some DNA tests on this stuff, because this really could open the door up to a lot of
solve
very
some
interesting
mysteries.
discussions.
Yes. Well, before we get away from the Anunnaki, I'd like to just go a little bit further back. Lemuria, Atlantis, we kind of have an idea that it might have been the beginning of the Red Race. But what about Lemuria? When do you suppose, or where do you suppose those beings came from? Any idea in your research, Brad?
Oh, sure. I mean, we first have to remember that Earth was a very wild and primitive planet many thousands of years ago, and humans were very small in numbers. I mean, this was a very wild planet, and even according to Edgar Cayce, when he was channeling some Atlantean discussions about how they were just going to clear out all these wild animals that could potentially harm humans to make it more habitable. So you have to remember that Earth was very different. I mean, there were continents that have shifted around, land masses that have sunk into the ocean, others that have risen up. So the Earth we have now would not be too easily recognizable, but certainly some things were still the same, and a lot of animal species have lived through that time. Now, what I'm really interested are the clues to the antediluvian civilizations that were here.
So am I.
The high civilizations that left behind ruins. And there's some great ruins off of the southern islands of Japan, south of Okinawa, that people have been scuba diving to, and I have photos of them in Modern Esoteric.
And what are those dated to, Brad?
Roadways that just go into the water, such as Malden Island in the South Pacific. So I think there is ample evidence that there was a high civilization here before even Atlantis.
And back to when, though? Dating back to when?
Oh, this would be in the hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Before the
perhaps
Anunnaki.
even up to 1 million. Now, there was a period where, while Lemuria was collapsing and going under the waters of the Pacific, there was a period when it did overlap with Atlantis.
Yeah.
And I say this because there are some ruins on the island of Java in Indonesia, which a pyramid that had just been swept over with water. And this pyramid is thought to belong to the Lemurians, and this was concurrent with the Atlantean civilization starting on the rise.
Okay, Brad, if you could hold on just a second. We've got an underwriting announcement here. Program on Portsmouth Community Radio is made possible by you, our members, and by our underwriters, which include Living Innovations, the Music Hall, the New Hampshire Gazette, and Daystar Computer Services. Okay.
All right. That was short and sweet. We're back.
Yeah, short and sweet. In my research, I was wondering at one point, why the heck is it gold that everybody seeks? Why is it that it's the gold standard and not maybe the tin standard or the platinum standard? And then I came across some information by Michael Tellinger about, the the Anunnaki needing the gold to put back into their atmosphere. And of course, then they were zealous about mining the gold. So I just think that's interesting, that connection, that I got my answer.
Well,
Now-
gold is really interesting element. You know, it doesn't rust. You can't transmutate it from something into gold or from gold into something else. It's very, very difficult to even dissolve. There is one technique my dad told me about that it can be done, but it's a very unique element. Not only because we think it's beautiful and wear it as jewelry, but also as the gold standard, as you mentioned, for basing our currencies.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, until Richard Nixon took us off that in '72. So it has many different properties and values by humanity, and has been for thousands of years. I mean,
Yes.
look at King Tutankhamun, his burial sarcophagus was made out of gold. So we know that the ancient Egyptians prized it highly.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like everybody else has too.
Followed by the Incas. Well, I wanted to ask you about the Rh negative factor.
Mm.
And what do you think about that? Its origin, and some are monkeys and some aren't. That's a heck of a way of putting it.
Yeah, I think the Rh negative factor in humans is really the smoking gun.
I do too. It's part of the missing link.
Partially created by ETs. And the reason being is, well, I have a chapter in Modern Esoteric called Blood of the Gods. And in it, I also describe the 13 bloodline families who have seemingly been in charge of the big decision-making processes here on Earth for many thousands of years. And these families very much are inbred. They stick together. Their marriages are arranged. And the main reason for that is because they want to keep their bloodline pure.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say pure, I mean without being tainted by the rhesus monkey positive blood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in 85% of us are Rh positive, but 15% of us are Rh negative. And this trait runs in my family as well. In fact, I lost an uncle when he was only an infant because he was born with Rh positive blood, yet my grandmother
Was Rh negative.
was Rh negative.
Yeah.
And upon birth, their blood had exchanged.
Mm.
And my Uncle Douglas died within 5 days. They called him a blue baby.
Right.
And, yeah, I mean, real sad situation. My Aunt Diane also was affected by it, but by the time she was born, they did have a way to treat her medically, and she has survived. But now what's so interesting about this Rh negative blood type is that it is the purest of blood, meaning someone who is Rh negative O type is the universal donor.
Mm-hmm.
Every single human can take blood from that donor. However, that donor of Rh negative O
Cannot
type
receive.
can only take that type of blood. Any other kind will kill him, much like it did to my Uncle Douglas. Now, what's so interesting about this is that no other animals have this kind of conflicting blood. None. Only humans. So
Well,
that
what about the
to me
monkey
is
then,
a
Brad?
makes a very strong case that not only are we unique from the animals in this regard, but we take with us a genetic blueprint of who we truly are. Now, I wish my friends at Ancient Alien TV show would also share my enthusiasm in this, because I have pitched them on this idea, and I was on the show late last year
Oh.
on unrelated subjects. But this, to me, is the best case for the Ancient Alien hypothesis.
I agree with you. And next to that would be the 22 separate DNAs within the human species. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, then with DNA mysteries, with the so-called dark DNA that they're not really sure what it is, or they call it junk DNA.
It doesn't do anything.
It out yet.
Yeah.
It's anything but junk DNA.
Right. It's just turned
it
off.
It is our connection, in my belief, it's our connection to the cosmos. It's our connection to becoming really superhuman with abilities that would allow us things such as telepathy, telekinesis, astral traveling, and many other human abilities that would just seem like it's out of a comic book, the powers of a superhero.
Really super paranormal.
We have this potential within us, and these are some other chapters that I outline in Modern Esoteric, because I really do feel at my core that people have a right to know this stuff. And I know some of it may seem really out there, but
after you do the research,
don't write about anything unless there's evidence to back it up.
That's right. I don't know if you're familiar with Phil Collier. He's an ex-IRS agent, and he's been visited since he was a child. And there are several tapes of him on YouTube. And what he mentions is that there are 22 separate species that have intermingled their DNA with us. So maybe not everybody has the 22 different types of DNA, but there's a combination thereof, and they've narrowed it down to 22 separate species. So you coming up with that in your book, I just think that that's really good cooperation. I find it very interesting. You're not the first.
Yes, indeed. And now that you mentioned in more detail that study, I am aware of it. And one of those 22 species is none other than reptilian.
I know it. I know
back in the bottom base of our brain is
exactly.
a reptilian brain.
That's right.
You should see her smiling here over that one.
Because that has bothered me. The reptilian brain. Where did that term come from? Then where did the reptilian brain come from?
Well, I think it can basically be correlated to the reptile species themselves.
So do I.
About as far as their brain has evolved. And then we have enveloped a much larger brain on top of it. But it can be traced to the reptile species.
That's right.
Now, when we talk about the reptilian ETs, clearly they must have a much bigger brain than the size of a walnut, like the dinosaurs had.
Isn't it supposed to be...
I think the wiring and the circuitry is very much...
improved.
Match.
But isn't it supposed to be our basic instinctual comes from the reptilian brain?
Yeah, that's right.
Survival and instinctual?
The fight or flight mechanism that we have when confronted with a dangerous situation, as well as some say our proclivity to engage in warfare. That
the violence,
this sort of fundamental, very deep feeling that we have when confronted with some kind of
threat,
confrontation that may result in physical bodily harm, that the reptilian brain kicks in, and that's what might motivate us to pick up a stick or something to fight off an attacker or to defend ourselves. Mind you, self-defense is nature's oldest law.
Survival.
And even though I'm very much nonviolent, believe in Martin Luther King and Gandhi and the way that they handled their situations nonviolently, there still comes a time when if you are facing possibly being killed, even if you believe in nonviolence, if somebody's on top of you, your instinct is to throw them off and to protect yourself or your family. So self-defense is nature's oldest law, and I think that is straight from the reptilian brain.
And there are also other issues to support the fact that we're something other than just animal. There's the issue of the extra rib in some people and an extra vertebrae. There's also the vestigial tail. Some people still have a tailbone. Why is it called the tailbone? Of course, the rhesus monkey factor is another thing. And then they still do not know the entire purpose of the tonsils or the appendix. So where does that stuff come from?
That's exactly right. And you know what's really interesting about this, just to tie in the Rh negative factor, it is the 15% of Rh negatives that have most of these little extra traits.
You're kidding.
Or artifacts.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Some other little tidbits is that RH negative people are more psychic.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot be cloned, and they are the most abducted type of human.
That's what I
that
thought.
there is.
That blood type is, yes.
Probably because of that negative blood type.
Interesting. That was my feeling, that it was the RH negative. Well, Brad, we're coming to the bottom of the hour. We're going to have to take a couple of minutes, break here for a couple of minutes, and we'll be right back, and please don't go away. You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM, and we'll be right back after this short break. The video portion of Spirit Radio, The Paranormal Experience, is sponsored by Spirit Chasers Paranormal, a paranormal investigation and research organization in Northampton, New Hampshire. Professional, respectful, courteous. Check us out at spiritchasersparanormal.com or email Willy at spiritchasersparanormal.com.
You are listening to WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth, West End. And this is Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. And from the community calendar, the Weeks Public Library in Greenland will be showing a Humphrey Bogart film, Sahara, on Monday, September 22nd at 6 p.m. Humphrey Bogart considered this 1943 World War II action epic from director Zoltan Korda one of his finest films. A special introduction will be presented by local buff Glenn Bergeron. Popcorn and beverages will be served. Popcorn, I'm going.
Yum.
The Weeks Public Library is located at 36 Post Road in Greenland. For more information is at 603-436-8548 or weekslibrary.org. And so how about some upcoming guests maybe?
I've got the upcoming guest list right here. On September 20th, we've got Reverend Michael Carter, who is the author of Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, will be guesting on our show. On September 27th, William Hall will be talking to us via Skype about his new book, The World's Most Haunted House, which is a true story of a poltergeist haunting on Lindley Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut. October 4th will be our first anniversary show, and we'll be celebrating 1 year on the air.
Yay!
Yay! And joining us to help celebrate is our very good friend Sal Nicosia, who is the owner and operator of the very haunted Shanley Hotel in Napanoch, New York. And Sal was our first guest, and we're happy to have him back for this special evening. October 11th will be joining us. On the first part of the show will be Jonathan Faust from UK's newest internet paranormal magazine, which is titled Supernatural Magazine. News and research from around the world on every aspect of the supernatural is the focus of this new publication, and it'll be dedicated to highlighting the work of all those involved in supernatural research. So whether you're an interested observer, an experiencer, or a part of academic research, their goal is to make all these topics available to everyone. And then during the second half of the show on October 11th, we will host in the studio members of Spirit Chasers Paranormal Investigation Team from Northampton, New Hampshire. And that's our guest list.
And they are going to have a big event coming up, which they're going to announce probably that night.
Oh, is it a secret?
Well, no, it's not really secret, but I don't know if I'm supposed to say it yet.
Oh, okay.
So we'll just hold it for now.
I'm sure the audience is dying to know.
Well, that's just the idea. Okay, it's going to be on November 1st, I can tell you that.
Okay,
and it's
great.
going to be good, and you don't want to miss it. So, shall we go back to our guest?
Yes. Hi again, Brad.
Welcome back, Brad.
Hello.
Okay, so we were talking about the 13 different bloodlines, so maybe in the second half of the show we can get into the control factor, who they are, what they're doing, and global domination, the subject of global domination. So can you kind of highlight the pattern that was created ever since the Anunnaki landed?
Absolutely, and it does follow a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
These families, these 13 bloodline families, are so old that they can be traced back to medieval Europe, and then further back to some to Egypt, and even some all the way back to Babylon.
Oh.
And some of the cult practices that they perform are remarkably similar to ancient Babylonian times. So it seems like they like to play this card of control, and they really don't want us to know about them. In fact, they fight tooth and nail to keep their secrets hidden from us.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think the name Esoteric is so appropriate for this series.
It is.
Because what I want to do is really expose all that has been withheld from us,
mm-hmm.
and all that has been held secret, because as I mentioned earlier, that we have a right to know this stuff. Now, not everybody is going to grasp this. Not everybody's even going to want to seek it or know it.
That's
but
right.
Those that do, the select few that take on to this esoteric subject matter, they will find it very empowering in their own way.
And
just like we need to know who is attempting to control us before we can attempt to remedy the situation.
Right.
So the control section in Modern Esoteric takes on that very difficult task of identifying who these individuals are. And we do know them by name at this point, and what they've been up to for so long, but also, more importantly, what they have been withholding from us. And some of the chapters in the book are, in the control section, are sacred geometry, sacred symbols, our pineal gland, the unhealth industry, how they are intentionally making us sicker, and the food control, how they control our food.
Frightening.
But I'm a very positive person. I'm very optimistic. I've never been depressed a day in my life, and I always like to leave my books on a positive note. And that's where it goes in the Thrive section, is how we can make changes in our lives to escape this control.
Well, do you want to tell us about what you think they're doing? For instance, the Federal Reserve Bank in controlling the money, and Monsanto in controlling the food, and the pharmaceuticals in trying to help us when they're making us sick, and then they're devising ways to help us, which really is making us sicker.
Make us sick, not cure
Yeah,
us,
that's
huh?
right. A good example is cancer, because just about little under 100 years ago, there was a gentleman named Royal Raymond Rife who basically matched the frequency. He could first identified the cancer virus, and then different. He could also see parasites. He could also see bacteria, and he basically devised a very clever way of matching the frequency and just exploding those cancer cells out of the body.
They're matching their vibration, their light frequencies.
That's right. Similar along those lines. Just think of the example of an opera singer who is able to shatter a wine glass with her voice. Basically, what is happening is the frequency is matching in such a way that it explodes it. And this was what I spoke about on Ancient Aliens last year, when they're trying to figure out how this giant megalithic city was created on the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia. And the bit I used from my interview that was on the show was about auditive levitation. Again, matching the frequency, and then in the case of these ancient builders, were able to construct megalithic structures. In the case of Royal Raymond Rife, he was able to very precisely explode the cancer cells out of people. And he was having such success with it that they just had to come down on him and destroy his research facility, discredit him, basically bankrupt the guy. And here's one of our greatest geniuses of the 20th century, similar to what they did to Tesla when he wanted to introduce free energy for the people.
Well,
they crushed him like a cockroach. They did the same thing to Royal Raymond Rife. Now, you can still go down to Mexico and get this treatment. Of course, you won't hear anything about it in this country. They don't want you to go. And in fact, if you get chemotherapy in America, the Rife machine doesn't really work as well as if you go in there pure.
Well, yeah, because they've destroyed cells.
Treatment. So these are just examples of how really amazing advancements for the human race have been squashed and suppressed from us. And this is what really upsets me, is that we have the potential to live to be 200 years old, disease-free, and healthy our entire lives, but we're not being given that opportunity.
We're being
In fact,
made
we're
sick.
dying young, we're sicker than ever, we're obese, type 2 diabetes, I mean, the list goes on. These are all preventable diseases that are afflicting us. And much of it, as you mentioned, are introduced in our food supply, Monsanto, and a lot of other nefarious players.
I noticed you did have a little section in the book there. A gentleman was in India, was it? Lived to be like something like 255 years old?
Yeah. He was actually in China.
Oh, China. Okay. I wasn't sure.
Yep, that is the first chapter of the Thrive section, called Living to 200.
Yeah.
Because we have this potential within us, and a lot of it really has to do with how we treat ourselves. Now, if we don't know that it's bad to eat GMO, or if we don't even get it on our labels, so in many cases we don't even have the opportunity to know. But if we can understand that that our bodies function very well in an alkaline state. And only when our fluids, our blood, our entire body becomes acidic, that is when cancer and many other diseases can take hold. But when it's in a very highly alkaline state, there was an example of a French doctor who said, I'm in such good shape with my alkaline state that I will drink this water filled with cholera. And indeed, he did not get sick.
Wow.
So these diseases cannot even take hold when you are in a highly alkaline state. And I have excerpts from different nutritionists that I was given permission to use in Modern Esoteric to give people an outline of some do's and don'ts, how they can make themselves a lot healthier and, as a result, a lot happier by being healthy.
You know, talking about breaking up those cancer cells with vibration, it's really sound, and that has become very important in a lot of things, like moving the blocks of the pyramids and so forth, decreasing the mass so that they're lighter and they can move them. But there's also the RFID tracking chip that not only contains all of our personal information, but it can be activated by sound to kill us.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sound is amazing. Some amazing properties. And I have some illustrations of what different frequencies will do to sand, as well as water. But even beyond that, Lynn, is what our loving intention can also do to water and on a microscopic level. Our loving intention can create beautiful molecular structures in water. And this has been proven and documented by a Japanese scientist named Dr. Emoto. And I have some images from some of his experiments that when people are really angry, and these are in controlled settings, they would curse the water, you're bad, you're terrible, you're polluted. And they would look at that water, and it was just all chaotic, and it did look polluted under a microscope. Conversely, when the same different control group would say to the water, oh, I love you, you're so nurturing, I need you so badly to be pure in my body, the exact same water, under loving intention, has this beautiful matrix of molecular structures.
That is amazing.
You have to see the photographs to really understand what I'm saying here.
I have seen that.
They take on a form of sacred geometry, and Dr. Emoto has shown in very exact scientific studies that indeed our intention can really change our physical environment.
And our health situation. Hang on just a second, Brad. We've got another underwriter announcement coming up.
Programming on Portsmouth Community Radio is brought to you by our members and by Davies Tire, providing professional auto repair and a full line of Nokian tires, with 2 locations to serve you, Islington Street and Banfield Road in Portsmouth. Discounts available online at daviestire.com. Davies Tire keeps you rolling right.
Okay.
All right, we're back.
Just a little short one there.
Oh, Brad, can you kind of highlight the direction that things are going in, and like you were talking about, we can combat it with our personal development, but if you could explain a little bit about religion and organized religion and how it is used as a means of control, and how wealthy the Catholic Church is, and how the banking system just a bit perverted.
Well, in Modern Esoteric, in the control section, I talk about the 3 city centers, the 3 city-states, which are actually separate from the host countries in which they reside. The city of London is its own autonomous entity within the city, the larger city of London, and this is the banking control. Here in America, we have Washington, D.C., which is somewhat separate from the rest of the country, and they are the military arm. Just like Vatican City in the center of Rome in Italy is not part of Rome or Italy. It is its own entity. So this is how they basically kept themselves immune from prosecution and are able to operate on their own terms, because they can control these three important facets of human society: religion, military, and finance. And by doing so, they have increased their hegemony pretty much around the world, although now there is blowback, mainly because a lot of things that they do, and let's just call them the cabal, are not too favorable for the lesser people in developing countries, or even in Russia and China. And Russia and China are now asserting themselves and saying, we don't want to be under this Federal Reserve central banker system. And indeed, they have broken away and have become the BRICS.
I was amazed at
That
that.
is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And about 160 other smaller countries have now joined on to the BRICS. A little news event here about 2 months ago was the creation of a new central bank, which is going to be centered in Shanghai, China, and is being financed through gold. There we are, back to gold, and creating competition to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So the entire financial structure of world control is now
being challenged
by the BRICS nations. That is why you see so much saber rattling going on. This whole thing in the Ukraine, to China and Japan disputing over their territories. And you got to remember, Japan is part of the Trilateral Commission. They're part of this G8, which is up against the BRICS nations. And that's why you have so much turmoil in the Middle East right now. So I think time is on the side of the BRICS, but we're walking on the edge of a razor here.
We are.
Because, I mean, just yesterday, the Pope said that all the things that are going on in the world right now can be viewed as World War III. I would disagree with that, because the Pope is very much aligned with the G8 nations. But it's funny that you brought up the Pope, because I've just signed Leo Lion Zagami. He's an author in Italy, very well connected into some of the bloodline families in Rome. And my publishing business, CCC Publishing, which is also my website if your listeners want to look it up, although Leo is not on the website yet, we've just signed him last month. And the first book is going to be called Pope Francis, The Last Pope, Money, Masons, and the Occult in the Decline of the Catholic Church.
Well, isn't he considered a
So
whistleblower?
there's no love lost between me and the Vatican, because indeed I see the Vatican as being one of these pursers of control that are basically holding the human race down, whereas religion should be something that brings us up. So
bit more liberating,
it just doesn't really make sense.
So this Leo, he's actually a whistleblower then, isn't he?
He sure is, and he's had many death threats and even attempts on his life, and it's very explosive. His next books after The Last Pope are going to be Confessions of an Illuminati, Part 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
each one of those books is 500 pages. So this is a lot of information that we're going to be publishing every 6 months. Every publishing cycle, I'm going to come out with a new Leo Lion Zagami book, all the way into 2016.
And who's editing that, Brad?
Yeah, well, it's funny because so many of my opportunities, they come to me. I go knocking on doors all the time, and nobody really wants to talk to me. But Leo saw my publishing list. I think he's heard a few of my interviews, and he said, "You're the right publisher for me." I did another book by another author called The Key to Solomon's Key, which was about magic and masonry. So I think he really resonated with that. And it also fits in perfectly with the kind of material that I've been publishing lately, especially the esoteric guides, which are very much right along those lines, too.
And speaking of a part 3, is there a book 3 in the Esoteric series coming up?
I do have a third book in the Esoteric series, but I think I'm going to go through all of Leo's books first, just because I'm kind of waiting to see how some of these world events are going to turn out. But also, it's good for me to take my time and collect information at my own pace and not feel really pressured to get this book out,
But there's a lot of work in these books.
It is a lot of work.
Tremendous amount of research.
Yeah, a lot of research.
It's my passion for these subjects. I'm really into researching them and coming up with more information. I mean, to come out with a third book means 24 new chapters, and to have that much more unique and original information to pass on to readers is a challenge. But it's there, and I'm finding it. But I'd like to have a little more time on the third book. And
I'm sure you're the guy that can do it, too.
Brad, what about you? Have you been threatened at all in any way?
I've gotten hate mail, which I guess could be considered threatening. I just shrug it off. I'm
no black helicopters yet?
A pretty visible figure here in San Francisco. Right now, this week, I'm on the cover of the Bay Guardian. An unrelated subject. But I also produced this big street fair here in San Francisco called the How Weird. And I wear my hair long, so it's in my position, it's kind of good to be a little freaky, I guess.
you really don't seem like...
And leave me alone. But
it's a pressure valve.
The truth of the matter is, I'm just a researcher. I'm not a whistleblower. I've never taken an oath of secrecy that I've uncovered, and I shouldn't have. I'm just finding information and packaging it. And I'm a good storyteller, so that's really kind of what it all comes down to. And if they ever, confronted me, it's all on the internet, so I don't know why you're upset with me.
You don't seem like somebody that's going to get too upset about anything.
Yeah. I make people laugh, so they like me.
Well, we have about 1 minute left, Brad. We ran out of time again already. And
it is amazing every time I talk with you guys.
I know it. And I do want to mention every time that you are going to be back on December 6th. December 6th. And
we'll talk about Future Esoteric. Just direct your listeners to bradolsen.com if they want to learn more about me. That's OLSEN. CCC Publishing to see all the books that I publish and what I've been working on. And we also have Esoteric Series as a website and Facebook page, and you can follow me on Facebook, too.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, Brad.
Once again, thank you.
We thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Willy and Lynn. I really enjoyed it, and great speaking with you again.
Terrific.
Okay.
And we look forward to December.
Yes, we will talk to you in December.
Pick it up then.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. Good night.
Good night, Brad.
And that takes care of Spirit Radio, the paranormal experience again.
Another hour has flown by.
Guess who is back? Daryl.
It would be Daryl.
I think he just left here a little while ago, but he is back again. He's filling in for Craig tonight.
Well, in spite of everything, I hope everyone is going to have a very good evening. And once again, thank you for listening.
In this one of many possible worlds, all for the best or some bizarre test. It is what it is.